Hello and welcome to another video review. This is Resonance for PC. This is a point-and-click adventure by Watchdog Games, and I believe it's pronounced Z Games, XII. I'm not 100% sure on that, so if I'm wrong on the pronunciation, feel free to correct me. But it was released in June of 2012, so this year, and it was kind of weird how I heard about this game. I heard about it when it was released for pre-order on GOG, which means that this was quite a long time after the game was actually announced. And when I finally got my hands on it, it was when I got the Blackwell bundle and Gemini Rue and this all together when they were on sale. It was a pick 5, pay 5 event thing, if you remember that. But I got all of those, and so I played through the Blackwell series first. And it was kind of a weird experience going from Blackwell to Resonance, because it's just this completely different style of game. If you're used to the Blackwell series, you're going to find that there are some elements from those in this, like the multiple characters thing, and it's just kind of weird because it's a completely different style than what I'm used to from Watchdog so far. So it's nice to see them kind of branching out and trying different things. And I think a lot of that might actually be from their co-developer Z Games, but anyway. One of the other big draws of this game was that it has Logan Cunningham in it. And if you don't know who that is, then go play Bastion and listen to the amazing sounds of the narrator. Yes, that Logan Cunningham from Bastion, aka Rux in that game, is in this one, and he plays Detective Bennett, and it's awesome. So, with that, let's go right into whether I enjoyed this game or not, and did it measure up to what they kind of build it up to be, which was this kind of sci-fi thriller. Well, the presentation is certainly pretty impressive, particularly from the sound design standpoint, but the visuals are no slouch either. There is a lot of detail in this game, particularly in the environments where there's just so much minutia they threw in there, with like even down to the graffiti and stuff like that. The animations are really nice and fluid, they flow together very well, and the whole visual style just creates this great sci-fi kind of thriller atmosphere. And it's almost like they did it unintentionally, so it's kind of weird how that works out. But the visuals themselves are very nicely done. And then there's, of course, the sound design, which is really well done, particularly on the voice acting, but the music's also very well done as well. It fits the game pretty well. And there's this nice sense of thriller stuff going on with a lot of the music. But the voice acting really steals the show in the presentation. They did a phenomenal job with that. All of the characters have their own unique personalities. They really come across with that in their voice acting. And of course, you've got Logan Cunningham doing the voice of Detective Bennett, so he's got this kind of gruff old cop character that's really just seen everything, done everything. He's got the experience, and he doesn't take crap from people and stuff like that. So you've got that kind of personality stuff thrown in there just from the voices alone. And you've also got just this nice sense where everything just fits together really well. The conversations feel natural as opposed to just something that's been read from a script. So it's actually a really well done presentation, particularly with the voice acting. And the voice acting is one of those things that it just really gets you into this vibe where you're like, I can really just get attached to this thing. It kind of comes across as this believable storyline, even though it is a sci-fi thing that's kind of ridiculous in a lot of ways. But it's ultimately not the great presentation that sets this game apart. Now, what really matters, the story and the gameplay, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about the gameplay first, because there's really not a lot to talk about. It is a point-and-click adventure game, which means most of the game is spent going around talking to people, trying to get new clues, trying to find items that you can use to solve puzzles and stuff like that. And it's actually a pretty interesting way they've done this, because the interface is radically different from what you're used to. And the 4-character mechanic is something that you had to get used to as well. You'd think that would actually be very cumbersome and hard to use, but when you actually get into the game, the 4-character mechanic actually works out really well. And they can actually go and do separate things, so it's not like they're all tied together and they have to follow each other around and stuff like that. But there are certain puzzles that can only be solved with 2 or more characters, and there are certain puzzles that can only be solved by certain characters. So it's a very cool and intuitive way of how they've actually worked that into the game, and the 4-character mechanic works out really, really well. I was really pleasantly surprised by that, because I thought it was going to be kind of awkward, but it ends up not being. What does end up being a bit awkward is the interface, which you have to get used to, but once you get used to it, it's actually pretty intuitive. It has this device thing up in the top left of the screen. In the top right, this little thing will drop down, and it will say the score that you got. But on the top left, you have this thing where you can actually click on the power button and it'll bring up the menu. But you also get 3 separate columns that if you hover over one of the buttons for them, will bring up the column of different things that you can interact with. The first column is memories, and it's just things that the different characters remember, and each character has their own separate memories, so that's something to keep in mind, that there are going to be different characters that are going to remember different things, and certain memories are going to be required to actually progress in this game. The second column is for things that you can actually drag into that column from the actual game world around you and see if you can interact with them, talk to people about them, that sort of thing. And it takes a while to get used to, but once you get used to it, it actually works out pretty well and it makes sense. It's certainly easier than typing out something or something like that. And then the final column is for items, which each character starts off with their own different items. You can actually transfer most of the items between different characters, and that's no big deal. But the way they've actually set up that item thing is a lot of those items are going to be used to solve puzzles. And so in that sense, it's a lot more like a traditional point-and-click adventure game, where you're actually using items to solve puzzles. And there's a lot more puzzles in this game than there are in, say, the Blackwell series. And some of the puzzles are a bit annoying, but other than that, there really isn't that much to note about them. They're not usually that difficult. They just take some trial and error, and eventually you get used to them. And a cool thing is, if you really screw up catastrophically and say a character would normally die or something like that, then it actually rewinds. It's this full rewind mechanic where you actually see the events going backwards. And it will actually go back to the event where you basically screwed up. And so you can try it again. So that's kind of a cool way of doing things. That said, the gameplay is pretty much what you expect from a point-and-click adventure. The story, however, is not. And it is a sci-fi thriller. Now, when you hear the word sci-fi thriller, you instantly think, oh, it's going to be boring. Turns out it's not. It starts off with introducing you to the different characters. They're each doing their own things, and it's this kind of concurrent storyline where all of these things are happening at the same time, basically. And so it starts off with that, and then all of a sudden there's this cataclysmic event that brings all of these characters' storylines together, and then it becomes this one overarching storyline that is just throughout the rest of the game. And it starts you off introducing you to Ed, Anna, Detective Bennett, and Ray. And Ray is a reporter. Anna's a doctor, and Ed is a physicist working with Dr. Morales. Dr. Morales has invented this technology that is called resonance. And the idea there is that it's this kind of particle acceleration thing, and it ends up being able to create boundless amounts of energy, as well as creating mass destruction, apparently. Because that's actually what happens in this game. Is this technology apparently goes horribly awry, and Dr. Morales is killed by it. So what ends up happening is you actually have to go and find out what his secret was. What was he trying to say when you were introduced to him in the first place, where he's basically saying this technology is terrible, I can't allow it to be used, and stuff like that. So that's part of the game. Most of the game is actually spent looking for the vault, which is where he kept the secrets of this technology. And the leading up to that is actually probably the weakest part of this game. So don't get discouraged by that. Once you get and learn more about what resonance actually does, and you learn more about the characters' backstories and stuff like that, you will find that the actual writing in this game is really, really good. And the pseudoscience actually comes across as believable in this one. It's a ridiculous concept, but they've actually made it believable, and they did a really good job with not making it sound like Star Trek technobabble. They actually tried to make it more reasonable than that. And so it actually is kind of a weird game, because I wasn't really expecting much other than a decent adventure game out of this, because I'd played the Blackwell series, and I really liked the Blackwell series, but I didn't know what to expect from this. And I went into it kind of expecting more of the Blackwell series, and that's not what I got. What I got was a more traditional kind of point-and-click adventure game, but played with 4 separate characters, each with their own personalities, and a storyline that really kept me on the edge of my seat, wanting to see more of it the entire time. I was just sitting there going, okay, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? Okay, that's kind of cool. That's interesting. And it actually surprised me at certain points. I was kind of pleasantly surprised by how things would turn out, and they would be actually surprising, as opposed to what happens usually in a thriller, where I'm just sitting there going, really game, or really movie, or really book, or whatever. So it does a really good job of holding your attention and just being this really interesting storyline that they've fleshed out really, really well. And that said, there was one letdown: the ending. I thought the ending was kind of abrupt and just kind of there. So it seemed to be kind of the weakest part of the storyline, apart from leading up to finding the vault. So it's kind of this weird thing, where there's certain elements of this game that are really, really good, and then there are others that just kind of bring it down a bit. So would I recommend this game? Definitely, especially if you're an adventure game fan. You shouldn't have any trouble with the puzzles if you're an adventure game fan. But this is a very well executed adventure game, and it's well worth playing, and it's certainly up to the standards of Watch Dogs games as far as the quality level goes. So I can't really do anything but recommend it. I give it a 4 out of 5. Thanks for watching.